Yo, what is up, everybody? So, locals report, locals deck, Flammamoth. And it had to be of a Bad Moth deck. Now, not this deck necessarily bad, but I built this deck basically off of I didn't know what to play for locals this week, and I just threw my deck boxes into my backpack and said I'll figure out something when I get there. And then I opened up my deck boxes and said, well, I have this Moth deck from, originally I built it in Daybreak, and then as just like a Wind Nexus Flammamoth deck, and then I updated it with Tornigen going into Moonrise, and now for Firestorm, we didn't add anything except for the new Nimbug. So the deck's been slowly progressing and building off there, and it's not a great deck build because of what I was working with, but it made it work. I made it work, and I did well. I went 2-1, and the only game I lost to was an Antitan like a Void deck, which I probably could have won if I just called Gorgons instead of Aeolus. So I went for combo instead of just guaranteed like countering that would help me in the moment. And everyone at the table was like, why didn't you just call Gorgons? And of course Gorgons not in my deck, and that card would have won me the game. So I misplayed. I could have gone 3-0, but let's just talk about the deck and talk about matchups and the anatomy of the bad deck and why I think it works so well in locals. And I think there's still something here, but it's got to be worked on, and I'm not going to be the person to work on it. So let's just talk about what we're playing. So we're playing one of Flammamoth, not the new one, the old one. The new one is usable, and you could probably make it a side package in certain matchups, or even make it your main package in this, because it is very easy to get this moth out. I do like this one because it does interact with a lot more of the game, and preventing our opponents from doing things in this format seems to be a lot more useful than trying to go for a 3 to 4 card board wipe combo. So we're playing one of our Flammamoth, 2 Nimbug to search out the Flammamoth. The only target in the main deck is Flammamoth to search. I would put the Foley Forest in the side, however, I didn't play a side at all this locals because, again, I put the deck together on the spot like 20 minutes before locals started. So 2 Nimbugs and a Flammamoth. That's all we really need for the Flammamoth package. The rest is kind of like a Wind Nexus Aeolus package. So I have 3 Aeolus. It's pretty core to this deck because with Aeolus, you can kind of turn any Aeolus, like Nimbug, into like a 2-card combo. There's a lot of 2-card combos to get Moth out, but Aeolus helps because of just toolboxing out wins. And it has a Nexus Bank. Again, this is a Wind Nexus deck originally, so having a big Nexus Bank, searching our 1-ofs, our 2-ofs, there's no card in this deck I run as a 3-of, except for, as far as Elestrals go, except for Windgens. I do run 3 Windgens and 1 Tornigen, because this is a pretty powerful and very small Wind core package that can fit in any Wind deck. And yeah, sometimes just calling randomly off the Windgen works, but also since we're playing a Nexus deck, I have a lot of Nexus enablers, like Altar. I do run Circle of Sky in this deck, and like Exaltair and stuff like that, so it is actually pretty reasonable to just call Windgen, get it wrong, and then use like Circle or a Nexus of some kind off Aeolus to just get it right and get Tornigen out. So it was very consistent at getting either Flammamoth or Tornigen out, just from Nexusing and doing shenanigans that way. And Tornigen's just a good card, like being able to call stuff, and I think a lot of people took their Cryoblast out of their main deck, so Tornigen's a lot safer to play into the current meta. Which really helped me in this matchup, just having a pretty accessible 8-2 body that gives me tons of card advantage. Got me, like, the starting of the deck usually is like Tornigen out first, and then while they're trying to deal with Tornigen, oh, now here's Flammamoth right next to it. So most of my games that I won, I started on Tornigen, and then got Flammamoth out a little bit later in the game. Sometimes you do it the other way around. If Flammamoth protects you, you get Tornigen out. But once you get either or both of these out in the body, you're just turning tons of card advantage and stopping the important threats from your opponent with Flammamoth. Continuing with the deck, since we are running Aeolus, I have 2 base at Sorlet. This probably could have been Sorlet from Firestorm, and then like 1 Crysport, but again, I threw this together on the spot, so there's not a ton of Firestorm in here outside the new Nimbug. 2 Toxiswarm. Pretty much everything's a 2-of ratio because of Aeolus. And again, like Nexus Bank, Toxiswarm, shenanigans, stealing damage that way. 2 Peagus. Actually insane. 2 of the people at locals this week were running Apollos, or Apollo Champion Apollo decks, so being able to just go like Peagus your Apollo with 2 spirits left on it was pretty impactful, or going Peagus, pop your Liar, swing over your Plucky, extremely relevant. So Peagus was actually really, really good just into the matches I played in, and was an all-star, and I top decked Peagus to win one of my games against the Like Void deck, so That was pretty cool. We have a 1 of Findust. Again, with some of our Nexus shenanigans, Findust plus Aeolus kind of turns into the way to get to Flammamoth or other shenanigans. And like, if I circle to Findust, I can search Tower of the Winds or search Aeolus and do some other shenanigans to get to 3 drops and 2 drops, etc. 1 Exaltair to try and finish out the game if it's going long. I can search Exaltair out and just burn for a bunch of damage, maybe protect it with the Flammamoth, so on and so forth. 1 Nemesis for heal, because again, we can just search it off Aeolus, heal, use our Nexus cards to heal even more. 3 Rabbits because it's Rabbit, and now we're getting to the runes. Pretty straightforward. We do have 1 Rescuing Our Laurels. We aren't running Earthquake because I wanted the extra slots more Fire Spirits for the Flammamoth, so I didn't run Earthquake. I'd probably put it in the side. And then our Nexus Shenanigans cards. So we have 2 Circle the Skies. Pretty relevant, pretty strong actually with this deck, because again, we have ways where we go Aeolus, pop a Windjin out, whiff the Windjin, let's say, circle, do it again, get the Windjin. And the thing is, right, we can kind of pay this for free, so we play the Windjin, pay off the Windjin for circle, Nexus 1 to Aeolus, discount the cost, get our card advantage, so we're drawing a card, get a card advantage off the Windjin, ascend Windjin. Actually pretty good. Additionally, sometimes circling to a P-Gust, or circling to a Toxic Swarm, circling to a Nemesail. Actually pretty decent in this deck. So I did like the Circle Sky, and sometimes I just stick a body Nexus to it, like stick a P-Gust Nexus to it the next turn with Circle the Sky, and then ascend into Moth if it's already in hand. Circle Sky actually did really well in the deck. We're playing a Nexus deck with a good Nexus bank, 3 Altar of the Stars. Again, same thing with Circle the Sky, lots of shenanigans you can pull with it, lots of plays you can make with Altar, and we don't run Tsunami because we're running out of slots. You could probably cut the circles for Tsunamis if you really want, but I did like the extra Nexus cards. 2 of Tower of the Winds. You might want 3 because it's the kind of 2-card combo to get to Flammamoth, but 2 is enough because we can search it off things like Findust or do some other shenanigans, and we have tons of ways to get to Flammamoth without Tower of the Winds, but we did run 2 Tower of the Winds because it's mostly searchable. And then pretty straightforward, Gorgon's Gaze, Shield, PTA, and Ambrosia's. We're only running 2 and 2 because we needed the space for other cards. So let's briefly talk about what this deck is doing, and it is pretty straightforward. The goal is pretty much basically just to go, cool, Nimbug, search Flammamoth, Tower of the Winds, Flammamoth into play. That's the bread and butter. Additionally, again, we have the Windjin package, and most of my games, legitimately most of my games, I was able to get both Tornadin out and a Flammamoth out, which are 2 extremely powerful beaters. Flammamoth gets to about 10 attack, and Tornadin has 8 attack, and just card advantage and negates is really, really powerful. There's not a ton of Elestral important removal, except for like Kinleo in this format. So just a big Flammamoth body to negate whatever opponent's playing, and again, like we can Flammamoth when we need to. So there's times when my opponents are trying to play like first light stuff to bait out the Flammamoth, which I'm not using Flammamoth on a first light. I'll wait till you either Apollo or Earthquake. So my opponent's going like first light, trying to bait out the Flammamoth, let it go. They're cool, okay, I put Soul Stalks on top. They go Apollo effect, cool, now I'll pop your Apollo, and you're going to draw the Soul Stalks, which is pretty relevant in the in one of the Apollo decks. They were running a couple of cows in the deck on top of the Champions Apollo stuff. So I do really like these 2, just pair really well together. The Spirit Math gets a little funky with the deck, so I do want to quickly go over the Spirit Math. And I don't have a side deck for this deck because, well, I didn't have the time to build a side deck because I was at locals already. But 2 Zapdos for the bunny. 2 Luminate. This could probably be 1. The deck used to run 2 Tornadin because it used to be a little bit more focused on just the Win Nexus Tornadin shenanigans. So I never got a chance to cut the extra Illuminate, but hey, it's an expand off the Tornadin for the effect anyway, so it's not the end of the world. We run 5 fires. That represents 2 negates and the 1 spirit we need for Flammamoth. We never use the fire spirits until we get a little closer to the end of the game, or we get Flammamoth out, and then we can just negate our opponent's runes. And then I believe that makes it 11 wind because that's what's left in the deck. Again, we didn't run things like Tsunami or Earthquakes because it makes the Spirit Math on the wind really tough. Again, we cut Illuminate for shenanigans like the Wind Elestrals and stuff, but overall, the deck did well. Again, I went 2-1. I could have done better, and even the match I lost, though, I went 2-1 in, or I 1-2. I lost it 1-2 going to game 3, and we went, I think, into time. And I just had to scoop because I wasn't winning in the time just with the spirit restrictions or the spirits I had left, because this deck does burn spirits very quickly, as wind tends to do. Wind and frost, two elements, are really good at just burning your spirits. So going into a time scenario with this deck, not ideal. But again, getting a Flammamoth and Tornadin out together, really cool. If I were to go forward and kind of try to tinker this deck a bit more, I'm definitely sticking with 1-in-1 of these guys. Also, this is a beautiful card. It's like $4 if you want to get a pretty Flammamoth. The normal Flammamoth is like literally like 10 cents. I think the Nimbugs are more expensive than Flammamoth, so really cheap boss Elestrals that you can pick up. I might cut the Circle of the Skies, but I don't know necessarily for what. The Elestral package I need to really take a better look at. Definitely keep 3 Windjins, 2 Nimbugs. I like those ratios. All of this can probably get finagled with. I think I'd keep the Aeolus. Maybe Galaxair. I do have a Galaxair I could put in the deck. The Sorlets were super relevant, just having 5s and position swap, as we know. Just good cards, so I'd want to keep the Sorlets. The Toxic Swarms are probably the easiest to cut. I never won a game of Toxic Swarm. I did do some chip damage for Toxic Swarm, which is like, oh cool, I'm doing chip damage, but never really relevant for taking over board state. So the Toxic Swarm can probably get cut for things like Galaxair, maybe a Kreisboar, other wind cards that go with Aeolus. I'm not really sure, but definitely can cut the Toxic Swarm. 2 Pigus, phenomenal. I would maybe even go to 3 Pigus, because Pigus actually in this format was extremely relevant at dealing with artifacts, the random back row my opponents are playing, and when some people are just afraid of hurricanes, dropping a P-Gust and then being able to Nexus to it with an Altar on the following up turn, stuff like that makes it actually pretty relevant. 3 defense is pretty relevant in some decks, like Werepup and stuff, so you can stop the Life Void from attacking. P-Gust dodges all the Werepups, which is nice. The one of Findus was perfectly fine. You could cut it easily for something else because it's really just there to search Tower of the Winds and maybe Aeolus. It's great if you can Nexus to it before you disenchant. But once you get one search out of it, don't really need it ever again. So Finger Dust can probably get a cut. And one Exaltair and one Nemasail is perfectly fine. I never actually played the Exaltair, but the Nemasail came in clutch multiple games where, again, once we get to a late game scenario, I have the ability to Nexus and do some stuff with Nemasail. It's just really good at healing, and then my opponents are knowing I'm playing a Wind Nexus deck, so in a lot of these late game scenarios, my Nemasail just ate removal and just took a lot of aggro over some of my other cards. So yeah, I'd probably cut the Toxic Swarm. I'd probably cut a Findus. It's fine, but I'd probably cut it. I'd probably want to go up on a P-Gust and maybe go to like a Galaxair just for an additional thing to I can search a Nexus and combo off to get to Flammamoth with. But overall, the deck, I really enjoyed it. I think it did pretty well. And I'm sure Dimax is going to be in the comments going, your deck is bad, feel bad. Moth is great. Moth is not great, but Moth is fine. New Moth is fine. Old Moth is fine. They're just fine. I think the biggest thing holding back Flammamoth as a win condition is realistically just being a wind card. Being a wind card, being such an expensive element to do a lot of powerful plays with is difficult for any deck to really deal with, even some of the Frost stuff with how expensive it gets. But I think this kind of core idea of Tornadin, Flammamoth, Aeolus was really powerful. And again, I've very consistently in many of my games got out the Tornadin, the Flammamoth in play at the same time. Out of like 8 games I played, I had Flammamoth, Tornadin out. If not together, both of them got out by the end of most of my games. I think every game except for one game against the Life Void aggro and one game against the Apollo player with the cows, because his game 1 he just blew everything up and nuked me. But yeah, really powerful core, and I really did like the deck, and I just want to talk about it. It's not a good deck. It's a deck that needs some tinkering, but it's got something. It can definitely do well. It's just a matter of finding what to tinker with to make it better, and maybe that's just more healing. Maybe a little bit more 5 style where it's a little bit more spirit efficient, because the spirit math is rough. Definitely cutting Illuminate for maybe another Lycaris. Maybe Tsunamis would help more. It's hard. The deck's missing something, and maybe this is a deck that just needs to be like a 43 card deck that can't exist because we don't have the space to make a 43 card deck in a 40 card format. So yeah, those are just my thoughts on Flammamoth in general. You could play either of them, but the old one just I think is better and has less deck building restriction to it, where we can just play 2 Nimbug and a Flammamoth and then win Nexus and the deck does fine. Yeah, that is the deck, and hey, it's a pretty cheap deck when this Flammamoth is pennies, and the Nimbugs are pennies. Like, the core of the deck is pennies, Wingens, pennies, Cornergen, pennies, because it's all in Shattered Stars. So, again, budget deck, I guess. The Aeolus is probably the hardest thing to get in the entire deck, because Aeolus hasn't been reprinted since Space Set, but yeah, that's the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed, and that is the anatomy of a bad Flammamoth deck. So, I'll see you guys in the next one. You guys have a great one. All that jazz. Peace.